Welcome, Army fans. This is Joe Iacono with GoBlackKnights.com, along with two GBK subscribers and Army superfans, Steve Kreipe and Dave Warnes. Guys, how we doing tonight?
Doing,
Great,
doing
Joe.
fantastic. Hey, anytime I can talk Army football is a good day.
Absolutely. We are going to review the all quarter century team that GBK put out here at the end of 2025 and debate and discuss it a little bit. It's gotten a lot of traction on the message boards. Even a lot of traction on the internet in general. A number of players and parents have reposted it to their social media feed, so that's been cool to see. Steve, real quick, 30-second to 1 minute bio and background for the fans, and feel free to promote your association with Crawdads there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so class of 84 was originally branched aviation. Midway through went acquisition and then retired in '04. Been working in industry since then. Primarily training simulators is my background. But yeah, passionate fan of Army. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Crawdads. Three of us kicked that off about 15 years ago, and we get together, watch the games, drink beer, and talk it up. And we've sort of found, we sort of break down the games and looking at, come prepared to watch the game, looking at stats and that. And Crawdad approached the local ESPN affiliate and kicked off a radio show that emerged into a podcast, and been loving that. So. Yeah,
Yeah, and you guys are out of the Huntsville, Alabama area, right?
correct. Yeah, the heart of Army fandom.
Nice. Yeah, it's one of the hubs, right? DC, Huntsville, Atlanta's. We get a decent fan base down here in Atlanta. Dave, why
Yeah.
don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience out there?
Well, Joe, hey, thanks again for the invitation to be here. Dave Warnes, I'm class of 1990. And for the last few years, I've been the class president for 1990. So shout out to my
Nice.
proud and mighty brethren. We had our 35-year reunion at the Charlotte game this year, which was just a fantastic event. Um, Season ticket holder, although I live in Ohio, so I don't get to a lot of home games, go to a lot of road games. I've had two sons also attend the academy classes of 20 and 22. So the three of us are on a text chat throughout every game, going over every particular play. So just love Army football and still basking in the glow of the uh, victory in the bowl game against UConn.
Yep, I was talking to one of my friends today who played for Duke back when it was actually he played on the teams in 17 and 18 when they played us. And he congratulated us on the bowl win. And I said, yeah, it takes about 10% of the sting of Army Navy away. But Navy's tough. So I thought we played well, and we had some weird bounces in the Army Navy game this year. I think that went against us, but yeah, it was a really nice bowl win, nice way to finish off the season for the firsties and get that trophy in the trophy case. Okay, let's get into the list. So, a lot of, like I said, good feedback out there on the message boards, a lot of varying opinions. This was not an easy exercise for Gordon Larson, A.M. Allen, Charles Grievous, and myself, but we undertook it. And after much debate, came up with the GBK list. I may tell people if my picks varied slightly from what GBK came up with as a consensus. But pretty happy with the list overall. It was tough to sort through. Let's just start off with the glamour position and the ones people pay the most attention to. And I think it starts off with a really good debate and potentially a lot of controversy. We have Kelvin Hopkins as our first team all quarter century quarterback, with Bryson Daly as our second team all quarter century quarterback, and Ahmad Bradshaw as honorable mention. All three quarterbacks, it should be noted, are Monken era. Not surprising. And a lot of our players are Monken era. So, Steve, we'll start with you. What do you think of our selections there? Did you have the order different? Kind of get into the quarterback position.
Yeah, I tell you what, I actually thought you would say this one for last. Man, you wanted to jump into the deep end of the pool right up front. Because, yeah, all quality quarterbacks across the line. As I looked at, Hopkins, matter of fact, the game, the iconic play that I remember from him was before he was even the starting quarterback. Temple game brought in, throws the touchdown pass to send it in overtime. We win it. Just so that's the iconic one. On the other end of sort of the bookends, the 70-point that they hung on Houston in the bowl game, and that. However, I think look at the body of it. And now granted, he was only a starter in one of the Navy games, the 2 years that he was the starter, but still he was 16-10, or the team was 16-10. 2 years he was a starter, 1-1 versus Navy, 1-1 against Air Force. Conversely, Bryson Daly, 18-8, 1-1 against Navy, 2-0 against Air Force. To me, those are the big metrics. But then you look at a lot of the stats in there, rushing. Bryson ended up with almost 1,000 yards, well, more than 1,000 yards more than Hopkins in that. I think the thing that hangs with a lot of people that the season that senior season, the only thing that kept that from being really almost a perfect season was a loss to Navy. But still, I would give it to Bryson Daly. But I think Kelvin Hopkins, quality quarterback, did a lot of great things.
Yeah, can totally see your perspective there, right? This was really tough. This was one of the longer debates we had internally. So go ahead, Dave.
I'm going off the board, guys. I have got to go with Ahmad Bradshaw.
I knew you were going there. You've always
Yeah.
been an Ahmad Bradshaw guy, which I can respect. Give us your criteria.
Oh my gosh. First off, some of the individual statistics are sensational. He rushed for over 3,000 yards in his career. He was responsible for two of the most pivotal victories of those 25 years. If I could say what were the most important victory we had in the last 25 years would be breaking the streak in 2016. He made that happen.
I was at that game.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think all three of us probably were.
Yes. I ran on the field. I jumped over the wall and ran
Me
around
too.
with
I stormed the field. Yeah.
The 2017 snow game against Navy, he was also piloting the team. But one I will go with was the 2017 win at Air Force when we had only won once in almost a 30-year period at Air Force, and we destroyed them that day, 21-0. And he rushed for, in that game, I had to write this one down because it was that impressive, 23 for 265.
Wow.
I mean, that was a sensational game. In terms of running the option and making the read, which we really don't do anymore with our modern version of the option, he really ran the option, and he was the best decision maker that we've had. I'm going to go back. I would say you got to go back to Sassaman and Healy in the 80s for a guy who ran it that smoothly, in my opinion. Now, there's my second would be
You
Bryson
leap
Daly.
over Makeda.
Yeah, I was going to say Ronnie Mack.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I shouldn't. And I also want to mention I've got Ahmad number one in this 25-year period. I've got Bryson two, Kelvin Hopkins three, although Kelvin's junior season was absolutely spectacular, particularly the Houston
2018,
game.
I think that was his peak.
Yeah.
2019, he just couldn't stay healthy.
Right.
But I think we're also remiss if we don't at least mention Trent Steelman. Trent was a 4-year starter, played on some pretty poor teams.
Yeah.
He took a beating, and he answered the bell over and over again. And so I think Trent deserves a lot of respect. And, you can also fill in a bunch of our other quarterbacks in this 25-year era. We've had some really good players and some real tough guys out there. So it's a great list, but I'm going with Ahmad Bradshaw. Even though he threw the football like a hand grenade, he was an awesome runner.
If you're going to throw Stillman's name out there, I got to weigh in. Very capable quarterback. I think, he was made the starter and they felt like they had to ride him. In terms of executing the option, though, he was a quarterback run first. If
Yes.
he was unsure, he kept it. And I'd say two-thirds of the time he made the wrong call when he kept it. I just remember being frustrated after those games that, there were so many key plays where he should have pitched it or given it to the fullback in the mesh, and he hung on to it. But not to take anything away from his accomplishments and his contributions.
Well,
Yeah.
hey, Steve, before the Army Navy game this year, I found myself on CBS Sports, and for some reason, I rewatched the game on the goal line with a fumble on the mesh with Larry Dixon. I'll never get over that one.
God.
That's yeah, and that's right. So here's GBK's thought on this. And you guys both made great points. And I don't think any fan is wrong to list any of the top three in the top three. I would also agree with Steve around Steelman. I think he was a tough kid. I don't think he was a great quarterback, especially in a triple option. If you're looking at, I think here's the criteria, right? If you're looking at overall career and just dominance, and just a superstar individual breakout season, Bryson Daly's got to be your guy for the 2024 season and what he did last year. I think if you're looking for performance in the CIC games, I like Ahmad Bradshaw. For that, he's the only quarterback I can think of, guys. Maybe I'm wrong, in the last 25 that has 2 wins as a starter over Navy.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Right.
So that's where I agree with you, Dave. And I also, Dave, agree with you about the game he played at Air Force in 2017. Well, I didn't think there was any chance we were winning that game. I remember my I3 classmates, one of them had just moved down here from Charlotte, and we got together and watched the game at a bar. And I'm like, it's been a nice season, but we're not beating Air Force in Colorado Springs. And we beat the tar out of them. A lot of reasons for that, but Bradshaw was a big chunk of it with his 200, would you say 265 yards. So for all those reasons, you could easily say Bradshaw, and it was hard for me to leave him off the list. The reason we went with Kelvin Hopkins as a group was just the athleticism and the eyeball test. I would say, while statistically for rushing, he didn't measure up to Bryson, he had the capability, if he had to be in a more similar offense, maybe not on the power runs at a gun or whatever, but I think on the option, you mentioned option reads and everything, Dave. I think Kelvin was at least as capable in the triple as Ahmad was. I think the Houston game proved that with the 70 points there. He also ran the ball as a unit, really, and that team was loaded. The 2018, if you want to talk best teams, in my opinion, that's the best Army team in the last 25 years. 11-2, won the CIC, beat the snot out of Houston. That team was just lost to Oklahoma in overtime. I mean, the only time they really laid an egg was opening night at Duke. Other than that, the rest of the season was perfect. And because Hopkins was the quarterback of that unit, we really liked him and what he could do. Also, his, you mentioned Ahmad's throwing ability or lack thereof. Bryson may have had some passing yards, but I don't think anybody's going to confuse him for Peyton Manning. But Kelvin Hopkins, like you mentioned, Steve, that Temple game before he was even a starter, I'm watching that game on TV and we're down late with a minute, 2 minutes left. And I turn to my wife and go, well, this one's over. There's no way with Ahmad Bradshaw, we come back and win that game. And Hopkins zings it all over the field. Like you mentioned him, Steve. I hadn't seen an Army quarterback zip it like that. since
Oh man.
Ronnie Makeda against Auburn in the Independence
Yes.
Bowl. We were down 32-7, and he almost comes back to beat them. We lose 32-29 on a missed field goal in '96 in the Independence Bowl. That
Oh yeah.
drive that Hopkins put together reminded me of that, and he was zipping some dimes in there. And I just don't think we have another quarterback in the last 25 years who is capable of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call.
So at the end of the day, that's why we went with Kelvin. Although certainly the arguments for the other guys, I understand them. It's really hard to pick against Bryson Daly with the year he had last year. I get it.
Yeah, and it's more recent. It's fresher in our minds. And on that, if I could just make quick detour. Thing that I was impressed here. I mean, it's not a surprise here that almost 75% of the people on the list are from the Monken era. But as going through that, it sort of reminded us where he's brought us. Because looking at some of those out years, those lean years, mentioned the 0-11 season or 0-12, 0-13, and being there for the Cincinnati game when that broke. But I appreciate you still highlighting some of those guys from those lean years, and I love the honorable mention you gave to Clarence Holmes. I mean, that was that 0-13 season, and yet, boy, I'd love to be able to clone him and have a guy that gummed up the middle like he did
Oh yeah,
on D
he
line.
was tough, and that was a Charles call, and that was a really good call by him. He did. I do want to say Charles reached out to a number of coaches and players throughout the years to get some more background, and those guys maybe have a more narrow scope than we do as fans, but they really know who they worked with and everything. The running back position, right, especially under Monken, was super strong, has been super strong, and that's one that was tough too. We had Carlton Jones, who is Army's leading rusher in the 21st century on the top. And you mentioned the lean years, Steve. He played under Todd Berry and early Bobby Ross, and
Ouch.
Carlton was imagine, and I'm going to come back to you guys on this. Imagine Carlton Jones in Jeff Monken's offense as a B-back and the damage that guy could have done. He was an absolute hammer. Him and Larry Dixon, we put in there at first team. Larry, of course, the fullback, late Ellerson era, early Monken era. Just a really good runner as a fullback. And then on the second team, we had Darnell Woolfolk, who out of all the Monken fullbacks, he had a lot of good ones. We think Woolfolk was the quintessential Monken fullback. And then Jacoby Buchanan, as Mark Quill and his teammates used to call him Fourth and Kobe. That guy was unstoppable in short yardage, right? So reminded me of Mike Mayweather back in our day, Dave.
Yes.
Loved him.
So just a lot fatter than Mike, but a heck of a runner. So and honorable mention, we had Terry Baggett and Raymond Maples in there. That backfield with Maples, Baggett, and Dixon, it was really hard for us to choose one of the three and leave two off. I personally had Baggett in over Dixon because, and I told Charles my brain's biased. At our 20th reunion, that was the Eastern Michigan game when he ran for like 300 yards or something. So what do you guys think of the running back selections? Anybody we missed? Anything you would have moved around there? Go ahead. We'll start with you this time, Dave.
Well, that is a great depth group. And I sort of, as I saw how you ranked them, I sort of thought, well, you wanted to have a fullback and a halfback. So
yeah, and what we did, let me clarify, because we didn't want to, because of all the different schemes over the different coaches, this was one of the harder parts. So we put the slots at their own position. And you'll see we had Noah Short and Kel Walker as the two slots. But then running back could have been like a fullback or a tailback or a halfback, depending who the coach was.
Well, I'm right with you with Dixon and Carlton Jones on the first team. And I like Woolfolk as the second best fullback to Dixon in the fullback position. Jacoby Buchanan. I always loved when, was it Ben Holden on the broadcast would say, fire the Buchanans? No, it was Ross Tucker
Ross Tucker.
Yes.
Yeah.
as the analyst with Ben Holden. Fire the Buchanans. I always would tell my boys about Jacoby. I'd say, if you need 2 yards, 1 or 2 yards, Jacoby's going to get you 2 yards. If you need 4 yards, Jacoby's going to get you 2 yards. I mean, he was a short yardage
Yeah.
guy.
We also liked
he had that
Jacoby's
large.
blocking ability. That's another reason he made the
Absolutely.
list. He was a great blocker.
Yeah, but
I
I
would-
forget what the streak was. The number of carries without a loss. I mean,
Mhm.
he strung together a real long streak there.
Yeah.
I would have put a special spot for him as a short yardage back.
Fair.
Because, I mean, that was what he was the best we've ever had. And we've had some
Yeah.
great fullbacks. You go back to Doug Black and ever since. And I would say that's still the most reliable short yardage back we've ever had. But on my second team, I would go with Raymond Maples. His
Okay.
yearling and his cow year, both years, he had over 1,000 yards. You know, then he had injuries. He wasn't a great fit. His last year was playing for Monken, for Jeff, and it wasn't a great fit in the scheme. But I really thought Raymond Maples, when we were running more traps and ISOs and things like that, was outstanding. So I would have him up there. And I did make some notes too about Terry Baggett, because that Eastern Michigan game is just burned in my brain. 4 touchdowns, 304 yards. He had touchdown runs of 67, 34, and 96.
When they handed him the ball, he would just go end zone.
Yeah,
Like,
that was a
great.
track meet. That was one of the more unbelievable games I can remember in my years of watching Army football.
Good stuff. Steve, your thoughts on the running back position?
Yeah, I thought you knocked it out of the park on the first team. And just as a quick aside, through a mutual friend, Larry Dixon was ecstatic that he made first team. Just to
All
let
right.
you know.
Good. Larry's been a guest on our podcast, and he's a great guy. He was one of the first guests I ever had on that was a former player. So always a special place in my heart for Larry. He came on back in the lean days when we used to struggle to get 100 views on our podcast. So
Yeah,
It's good.
and again, Carlton Jones, as you said, I mean, 2006 when we were 3-9. I mean, you know, tough, but still the talent was there, and we might have been one in, you know, whatever, if it hadn't been for him. Darnell Wolf-Falk. I mean, he was the. Although I think, you know, Jacoby Buchanan had like a 50-yard run that one time, you know, the rumbling, tumbling, bumbling.
I remember that. I can't
Yeah.
remember who it was against. It was at
Yeah,
like
I can't remember that either, but I think it surprised everybody. But at the same time, Darnell, I mean, he was just just a big body, solid, but had that good linear speed, you know, that good combination that just made him, you know, formidable. So I think, yeah, you guys just nailed it there. I thought good combinations.
good.
Darnell Wolfolk, the pad level that he played at, because he was a pretty short, squatty guy. He was a fire hydrant. And
Yeah.
no one got underneath his pad level. You know, he
Yeah.
was never getting driven on his back.
Yeah, he didn't get driven back. I remember 2016, right? Which was really the first turnaround year when we went 8-5 and broke the streak. The opening game was at Temple. And the things I remember from that game were Brandon Jackson. I said, wow, we got a corner who can cover. I remembered, and the other thing I said, looks like we got not one, but a couple full. Because before that, we had really struggled at the fullback position. And it wasn't Larry Dixon's fault necessarily. It was just that the blocking was poor. And in 2015, I think Dixon had graduated. So I don't know who we had back there in 2015, but you can't run the triple option without a B back. We just didn't have one. And I was like, wow, looks like we have a couple. And we had Darnell and Andy Davidson, who both were really solid back there. Davidson's challenge was his ball security, but Wolfolk was just an absolute stud. So moving on to the slot position, you know, we went with Noah Short and Kel Walker. You know, Monken doesn't use the slots nearly as much as like Ellerson did, for example. And it's really morphed with Noah And I think what Cody wants to do in the future, it's really more into like a slot receiver position than a slot back per se. There might be some prejudice against a current player because we like to think nostalgically like, oh, the old guys are better. But Noah Short's the first guy in Army history to go 1,000 rushing and receiving in his career, and just one of the fastest Army players I've ever seen. So any debate, questions, anything we did wrong there, I'm really confident in both of those two picks.
Yeah, I think, with Noah, I mean, yeah, that was the obvious call. And you're right. And the thing that made his speed, such a weapon, it was elusive. He looked so effortless when he kicked it into that second gear that, I think as defenders, the line that they were on for the tackle thought that they had it, and he kicks in that second gear and couldn't catch up, and led to a lot of those big plays. But it was great having a big play threat like him these last couple of years. He will be missed.
Yeah, I love Kel Walker too, but I think there's really not a lot of debate when you set that up as a separate position of the slot. I was trying to think who else, was noteworthy, played a few years. Jordan Asbury came to mind
Yeah,
to me.
Asbury was solid. He was, I think, Noah's famous for that yards per carry stat that he leads in, or yards per touch, and Jordan's high on that list too. He's like third, I think.
I saw Jordan play in high school. He played my son's team, and it was shock and awe. He was with Cincinnati Coleraine, and they were ahead of us 35-0 in the playoffs at halftime.
That's hilarious. Then we went to wide receiver, right? And obviously in the Ellerson Munkin era, especially the Munkin era, we don't throw the ball. So we really had to go back into the way back machine for these guys. We went with Aaron Alexander from the class of 05 first team, and Jeremy Trimble for second team. I personally had Trimble ahead of Alexander, but I got voted over, I guess you could say. I also considered Edgar Poe, but then I forgot, even though he played all 4 years, he never walked at graduation. So he got eliminated based on our criteria. Any other receivers you guys want to throw in there?
That's a sort of a thin group, Joe, beyond them. When we first started, when I started looking at the list, the name that I immediately went to was Jeremy Trimble. I'd forgotten a little bit about Aaron Alexander, and then I remember someone had to catch passes in those early aught years when we were trying to throw the ball around, and Aaron was a good one. But I just thought Jeremy Trimble was the most dynamic wideout that we've had, going back maybe to Sean Jordan in the late 80s, in terms of explosive. And maybe I'm giving Jeremy some credit too for his kick and punt returns.
His kick returning, yeah, and I think we have him on the list as a let's see, where is he? Is he on there as a
second team kick returner?
Yes. Yeah, kick returner on the second team as well.
Other than Tyrell, I don't know who else has taken, returns back to the house like Jeremy did on a number of occasions.
Yeah, he's still the last guy to do it, right? So, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on something just as a quick detour. To this day, I'm amazed that Tyrell never took it all the way. He had the potential. Just things got to fall into place to make that happen. All the blocking and that.
Yeah.
And
he had one, but it got called back. Remember?
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm with both of y'all. If I had to pick one, I think I would have given Jeremy Trimble the first team honors. But it would be interesting. I'd love to hear what Charles got from the coaching staff, though, because especially prior to the change in the blocking rules. I think the most valued skill in a wide receiver, the ability to cut block.
Yeah. Steve, you froze
the
up.
dynamics
There
of
you go.
thing, and how effective were those guys. The coaching staff probably value that higher than whether or not they can, bring the ball in.
Okay. Let me know if we start to struggle on it says my internet connection's unstable. I've been having Wi-Fi challenges today for some dumb reason. So hopefully it's gotta make it through the rest of this. All right. Moving on to positions that Army actually specializes in. Tight end, we don't use the tight end a lot in pass catching, so they're primarily blockers as well. We felt like, based on our own opinions and feedback we got from the coaches, Josh Lingenfelter is probably the best we've had in the Monken era. He did get a couple looks from NFL teams. Really solid guy. Sean Saturnio loved him. A lot of the other coaches were, Matt Drinkle was a big Josh Lingenfelter fan. And then for second team, we had Justin Larson from back in the day. He used to go up and catch some passes back in the early days, 07, 08. We debated putting Allie at tight end, but we decided to leave him at his professional position, which was tackle. So,
Joe, I want to go on. I want to hit on that one because that was one of my big beefs, maybe with the team. Obviously, Ali is the most successful NFL player in Army football history, but he was a man without a position really at Army. As a defensive lineman, as a plebe, an offensive lineman as a yearling and a cow, and then that hybrid tight end, split end we played him at his first year. And I wanted to go back and look at that a little bit and see, how he really did in that position. And, he caught 50 balls.
wow.
And he had like a 5 touchdown
option offense, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you remember, we're just lobbing the ball up, high to him.
Yeah, and jump ball.
Yeah. And the other thing was that was prior to the blocking restriction about going from the outside in. So he could be lined up wide at 6'10", 275
and just
come down on the defensive end or outside linebacker to seal the outside.
Yeah.
Was devastating. I mean, if you were playing outside linebacker and you knew he was wider than you and he was going to come down on you from the outside, man, your head's on a swivel.
Yeah.
So it was unique. It was special. It deserves special acknowledgement, but I wouldn't have him on our first team offensive line.
Yeah, and I get that he only played like a year at tackle at Army, if that. But we just, and I could totally see why you would put him. Like honestly, it would be better at tight end because we have less good tight ends than we do offensive linemen. but we put him in his pro position because we didn't want to penalize him for poor coaching. So we went with that. The offensive line, for the most part, we went very recent. And, how many of us, you can see with your eyeballs, kind of, if you're a football guy, who's a good offensive lineman. But it's really hard to say, like, which Monken linemen have been better than others, unless you look at like Pro Football Focus or some of those other stats. But what we did is we looked at a lot of the accolades and awards, and the last two teams have gotten more All-Americans and All-Conference awards than at just about any point in history. Now, I think that's a double-edged sword, and what I mean by that is I believe they've been advantaged by being in the American Conference. There's more eyeballs on them. But I also think the fact that they have to deal with the new blocking rules gives them a huge disadvantage over previous offensive lines. So I'm really impressed with the recent crop of offensive linemen the last couple of years. First team for the fans out there, we went Allie and Brett Toth, who are both NFL guys at the tackles. We went Will Jeffcoat, who of course is a firstie this year and made the AP All Bowl team as an offensive lineman, as well as received all conference honors. Lucas Scott, who is with the Baltimore Ravens practice squad now, I believe, but another NFL guy there who was another all-conference guy last year. Center, tough one. I'll let you talk about that. Do you go Bryce or Brady? We went Bryce just because that 2018 offensive line with him and Brett Toth was just nasty. Nobody wanted to play them. Ed Oliver from Houston, like who's with the Bills now, took a rain check and said, "I'm out of the bowl game." And nobody wanted a piece of those guys. Holland started for 3 years. This is an interesting stat. Bryce Holland, Connor Bishop, Brady Small, all three or four. Now Brady will be a 4-year starter at center. So we like to start them young at center, and then these guys keep their role, which is great. Second team, we had Frank Allen, who's an older school Ellerson guy. I honestly don't know that much about him. We went with Connor Finucane, who had all conference honors last year. Paolo Gennarelli, who had all conference and all American honors last year. Bill Katsagiannis, who had all American honors last year. And of course, Brady Small. And then trying to think if we had any, we did not have any honorable mention O-linemen. What are your guys' thoughts around the O-line?
To what I would have done much the same thing in terms. I agree. The last couple of years, we've been so solid in O-line. The one thing you didn't mention last year, Joe Moore. I mean, the fact that we beat out Power 5 teams in that. The only thing I would take issue, because I think it was solid, I would tip my cap to Brady Small. And I say that for two reasons. I remember interviewing, I can't remember which coach we did, but we were talking about Brady Small when he was a beanhead. And he said, when he came in, he said, preseason camp, we're sort of going, really? But he's a beanhead. And, to be start ready, that he said that, he was at a place in his skill set. He said a lot of, 2, 3, and 4-year players aren't there. So that was one data point. The other one was, I heard from multiple people, if he wasn't on the O-line last year, they don't win the Joe Moore Award. He was the anchor. He was the glue in that. And the fact that we've still got another year with him is fantastic. That's the only thing I would take issue with.
That's fair. Dave?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier I had Ali in a different category than offensive line on this team. And so I would substitute in Connor Finucane from last year's team.
Oh, gosh.
I think he was a 3-year starter. He brought a nastiness and an attitude to the offensive line that I thought was pretty unique, and that he was really the bell cow in that regard. And I go back, and I think we've had 2 dominant periods of offensive line play in the last 25 years. That 17 and 18 group, which is represented on your team, by Bryce Holland and Brett Toth.
Yeah.
And then this most recent group that we had, Bryce Holland, I saw as the sort of the bell cow guy with that group, and so we've been really fortunate with those 2 windows, so just some superior offensive line play. And I hope we can keep that going, because really some solid performance on there. I didn't realize that Lucas Scott was still on the with the Ravens. They're playing him at fullback, right? It's a blocking back.
Yeah, they have him he slimmed down, and they had him at fullback, and I think he's with their practice squad. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the case.
Well, yeah, that's it's a good group. I think you guys did really well with those.
Yeah, that group, right, has really been the strength of the offense. I mean, when you get down to it, especially the last couple years since the blocking rules have changed, and we really, as you guys mentioned, kind of gone away from the traditional triple option, that offensive line has just been nasty, because really what we do is we just play power football with a little bit of option look. So
Joe, I'd have to say, though, our kryptonite in these last 2 years has been Landon Robinson.
Yeah. Landon's tough. I actually thought, and I went back and watched the game at home after I got home on TV, because sometimes in the stadium, you can't always tell what's going on, especially from the sideline. I thought Brady did a good job with him in the first half. The second half was a little bit more of a struggle, a little bit of a different story. I thought Brady really got the best of him in the first half, actually.
Well, we did much better against him this year than last year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was
Robinson,
legitimate
I think, handled Brady last year. Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't
He's
Robinson first team All-American for AP
Yeah,
this
he's
year?
going to get some looks from the league. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. That
Oh,
guy's
yeah.
a freak. He's one of the most athletic linemen I've seen in an academy like ever. That dude's an absolute freak. So now so we're not going to talk about this, but we'll just hit the special teams real quick. First team kick returner, punt returner, kicker. We went Tyrell Robinson for kick and punt return. Really speedy. If the guy doesn't have two ACLs, who knows what he ends up doing? Maybe the most athletic running back I've seen in the Monken era. His freshman year was probably his best year, to be honest, which is unfortunate, but really talented. And then we went with Quinn Moretsky as a first team kicker. Mr. Ice Water in his veins, wins the overtime game against Navy. You can't do any better than that. And then
But except the year before when he missed the field goal at Troy. And we lost.
he did miss at Troy. And I remember saying before he kicked the overtime kick at the Navy game, I don't care about Troy anymore. Just make this one.
Good call.
No one will remember that when Quinn walks in the bars as an officer, no one's going to remember that he missed against Troy. So, and then second team, we went Jeremy Trimble, AJ Howard, and Daniel Grochowski, who was an early Monken kicker who did a nice job. Let's get to the defensive side of the ball. The D line has been a little thin, really. We put McNary at DE, even though you could put him at outside backer. The outside backer position was stacked, so we put McNary really was like an edge rusher, more of like a, it was tough because Ellerson ran that 4-3 Desert Swarm thing, which was a lot different than Bateman or Woody's 3-4 scheme. So we put McNary at DE. For my money, Josh McNary's the best defensive player I've ever seen at Army. Had a good career with the Indianapolis Colts in the NFL. We put Kyle Lewis, who was one of last year's team captains, in there at DE. Nolan Cockrell at nose tackle. Nolan's the best nose tackle I've seen. He was on that 2021 defense, which was really tough. And the 2020 defense came into Wisconsin and Camp Randall and really shut down their running game. He had a great game there. Second team nose, we went with Cody Harris Miller, and who's doing a nice job, and we have 1 year left with him, so excited about that. And then we went with Amadeo West and Mike Gann. Our guy Marquel Broughton said he would have put West in over Lewis on the first team. Guys, your thoughts on the D line, which, like I said, has kind of been a little lean for Army, in my opinion. It won't be next year. It's probably going to be strength of the defense next year because of Balsam, who's an absolute beast.
Go ahead, Steve.
Amadeo West. I remember when we got his commitment and I started, watching some of his high school game film and go, holy smokes. And he had, some struggles with some injuries there that I think he kept him from reaching his potential. But I mean, if he was on the field, he was a dominant presence. So I might also think about him for first team.
Yeah, I thought your first team was solid, but that's a good one. And I also glad you mentioned Mike Gann. 2010, that wasn't our winningest era, and we're going back a ways, but he was a really good player.
Defense was really solid. They kind of carried the offense that year. They created a lot of turnovers. It was a good defense.
Right. We had Steven Anderson, inside linebacker. That was a good defense. We mentioned today John Vogt.
Yes.
You cannot forget he's not on the team.
We forgot about John Voigt. GBK dropped the ball on that. If I had it to do over, I'd put him in there.
One of the most iconic plays of the last 25 years, him chasing down the Navy quarterback to save the game in the snow.
Yeah. That was, if I could, Steven Anderson. Again, there's certain players that stand out to you. When Steven Anderson came over Air Force's O-line, tackled the quarterback before he even got to the mesh. That one of those
We're,
iconic plays.
we're gonna get to the linebackers. We'll get there. So
Yeah.
that's going to take up the bulk of our discussion on defense. Will be the linebackers for sure. But yeah, but Voigt, yeah, interesting story behind him. When I think my dad was retired at the time, but he used to go around and give private clinics for wrestling. And when he would when he would talk to the kids about what effort looks like, he would always show that clip. There's no reason by the laws of physics that John Voight should have run down Malcolm Perry. It just doesn't make sense. Like, but that's the kind of effort it takes to beat Navy. And that's what I think that team realized and understood. All right. Now let's get to the strength of the Army teams. The inside linebacker position, linebacker U. There were 10 to 12 guys you could have. There's guys we didn't even mention who were the best players on their Army team. That was that good. First team, we went Cole Christensen, who was a 3-year starter, absolute stud in the middle, really just an athletic presence, has had a very successful NFL career for an academy player, 2 Super Bowl rings with the Kansas City Chiefs. Gotta love Cole. And then Steven Anderson, and we'll let you talk about him again, but Steven Anderson was our other pick. Again, tough because he played in a 4-3, so he was a middle backer as opposed to a Mike or a Will. How do you compare them? But at the end of the day, we thought Steve deserved the nod to be first team. He wasn't on my initial first team, but I'm happy to put him there. He's right there with all the other guys. And then second team, we went Eric Smith and John Radigan. So these are interesting and controversial. Eric Smith was one of the all-time stat leaders we've had at inside backer. He was a 3-year starter, played with Cole Christensen in 2019, and then played with Radigan and with who did he play with in 21? I don't even remember, but he played with Radigan in 2020, and just was really a solid Mike linebacker out there for Army, who just was an amazing run stopper. I think he's a guy who didn't get enough credit, so I wanted to put him in there for sure. I got feedback from someone, I will not mention who said there's no way we should put him in over Caleb Fortner. Caleb is much more athletic. Eric was an absolute hammer in the middle, but Caleb is much more athletic and was an absolute beast against Navy. So I won't tell you who gave us that feedback, but we did get that feedback. Radigan is controversial because he only started for 1 year, but here's my argument on Radigan. He backed up Cole Christensen, which tells you how good Cole Christensen is if he could keep Radigan on the bench for 3 years. Radigan's 2020 season was the most dominant season I've seen by an Army defensive player other than Josh McNary's senior season. He was an absolute machine on the field. Interceptions, forced fumbles, tackles for loss.
Pick sixes.
He got COVID before the bowl game, so he couldn't play against West Virginia. He plays in that bowl game, we beat West Virginia. There's no doubt in my mind. Radigan, that single season, in my opinion, may be the best season I've ever seen by an Army football player, and he's still in the NFL. He's still bouncing around. I think he's with the Panthers. So obviously they see a lot of talent there. Honorable mention, we went with both the Gremlins and then in Caleb. We could have put either of them in there. They're both playing in all-star games. They're both being looked at by NFL scouts. Both of them have the talent for sure. Maybe just anti-recency bias. We didn't put them in. I don't know, but they're just as deserving as the other guys. I couldn't get final career stats on them, but at the end of the day, I think Andon Thomas I think Fortner may end up being the leading tackler out of this whole bunch when you add all his career stats together. But you guys go ahead. This is an interesting conversation. All these guys are amazing. There's guys I could name who didn't even make the list, but I'm sure you guys are going to name them. So go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple, like I loved the six that we named. And then, Hammer Sticks, James Nautigal, like
Yep.
not mentioned. Uh,
Yep.
he was a brute. Jeremy Timpf,
Mm.
um, really good player. I went back
Another
and looked.
3-year starter.
Yeah, I looked at his stats. In those 3 years, he had 190 solo tackles and 320 credited tackles in those
The
3 seasons.
only reason I didn't put Tim on the list, and he does not take, guys, he was a great player. For those of you who hear this, don't start picking on me saying I'm a Tim hater. That's not the case at all. The guy was amazing. The only reason I don't put him on the list, some of those tackles, the stats are misleading, and here's what I mean by that. The 2014 and 2015 teams that he played on, the defense was so bad that he was the only one who could make a lot of those tackles. And a lot of those tackles weren't like stick in your face. It was like lost in the wash. Like in 2016 now, when he had Andrew King on the other side of him and Kenny Brinson and Alex Ackerman on the outside, yeah, that's when he really started to kind of come along, I think.
Well, and there's another name, and you had him on the honorable mention, the King of Queens, Andrew King. He was just rock solid. Not a lot of plays in the backfield, I don't remember, but just a playmaker. And that was, if you think that foursome you just mentioned that played together, all represented here on
Yeah.
either the first,
Yeah, we
second,
had
or honorable
Ackerman. We'll
mention.
get to the outside backers, but we had Ackerman first team and Brinson second team. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, good stuff. I don't take any issue. Radigan, the thing I remember about him was his straight line speed. His ability to close was just remarkable. And again, sort of like what we were talking about earlier. I mean, I remember when Cole Christensen. I mean, one of many. Well, he's graduating, and the fan base goes Chicken Little. Oh, this is the end of our. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And I remember watching that one game where Radigan had that pick six, and they said this guy's been a backup, and look at that speed. I mean, he was just outrunning everybody. And I think he did spend some time at running back when he was in high school.
Mm.
But yeah, that's talking about this, and we'll talk about it more on the outside linebacker. It is really remarkable. I think it's a testimony to the recruiting and the development and the culture that Monken has created where people are patient. I'll get my turn. I'll get my turn. But yeah, I mean, great slate of linebackers.
Yeah, Steve, we're at GBK, we jokingly call Army linebacker you, but really for the G6 teams, they probably do have the best linebackers over the past 10 to 15 years, honestly. I don't think there's another G6 team that can compete. And you're right, the recruiting has a lot to do with it. I think one of Monken's philosophies is let's go get athletes and then we'll figure out what position they can play later. He gets a lot of safeties who he bulks up and moves to linebacker, a lot of linebackers who he bulks up and moves to defensive line. I say Monk and Nate Woody, of course, is a huge part of that as well. In my opinion, the most underrated defensive coordinator in college football and the best defensive coordinator in college football. I will absolutely say that. The amount of games that guy's had to save, just unbelievable. So, but when you look at that, and then offensively, he recruits a lot of quarterbacks and moves them around. I mean, we talked about Brett Toth. He came in at 220, and we bulked him up to over 300 pounds and put him on the offensive line. So their recruiting philosophy there is recruit leaders and athletes, and usually your best leader and best athlete on a team is typically an inside backer. That's gone really well. Last question for you guys on the inside backer position before we move on. Would you, since it's recent and it's going to be in people's heads, would you have put Fortner and Thomas in over any of the four guys we had?
Maybe over Eric Smith.
Which one, Fortner or Thomas?
Fortner was a more explosive big play player, but man, Thomas, you could
Yeah.
count on him making the tackle and preventing the jailbreak run, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think they really complemented each other very well as a pair.
Yeah, I,
absolutely.
I agree completely, and I would tip it to Andon as well. Just yeah, steady. I'd love to pull up the PFF stats on there, and I guarantee he's a high 70s kind of guy,
Yeah.
and rarely made mistakes. He was there. He was where he was supposed to when he was supposed to be there.
Both those guys are playing in postseason all-star games. I was sitting next to an NFL scout in the booth at the Army Navy game, and he was there to look at those two, Eli Heidenreich and Casey Larkin. Those were the four guys he was there to look at.
Ooh,
So,
interesting.
um, yeah. So I agree with you. My take is Fortner was I think they were perfect complements. Fortner was a great havoc player. He created a lot of problems behind the line of scrimmage. He really went off in the Army Navy game with the strip sack touchdown, and then the even this year when he put his helmet on the ball and just Horvath got lucky really and recovered his own fumble
Oh,
and
yeah.
fell on it. So I
Uh,
agree with Fortner there that the but the athleticism and the speed of Andon Thomas, similar to John Radigan in a lot of ways, are really good in pass defense and pass coverage. So can't go wrong there. All right, let's get to outside backer, another position, not quite as loaded as inside backer, but some studs. Andre Carter, who had maybe who had was gosh second in the nation in sacks his junior year. His senior year, he got banged up a little bit. He didn't have the strength around him, so teams could double him a lot more. So he didn't have as good of a senior season. Alex Ackerman, who got some looks from the New Orleans Saints, was a really good defensive lineman or outside backer in Jay Bateman's defense. And then second team, Kenny Brinson, of course, who was a 4-year starter, which you don't see a whole lot on Army's defense. Mr. All Everything there, right? And another great havoc player, spent a lot of time in the backfield. And then Malcolm Morrison, who actually got a contract with the Raiders and was just a beast at Nate Woody's Apache position, which is a little more like a nickel, but was an absolute stud out there at Apache, made a lot of big plays. Thoughts on the outside backer position?
Well, Alex Ackerman is one of those you referenced. He came in as a safety, bulked up and turned into an outside linebacker, and again, just so solid in the defense and reliable. Andre Carter, his junior year, and he had these 16 and a half sacks. I think he had 20 some credited tackles for loss that year. As you said, his senior year, they were blocking him the way I watch every Sunday defenses block Myles Garrett for the Browns. I mean, they just, they're just all over him. They scheme around him, double team chip, and it made it tough for him his senior year. But really good player. I had one I'm coming off the board for that I wanted to mention too. He was a very solid player. I don't think a football player at this level of the guys we've mentioned, but I wanted to mention Andrew Rodriguez
Yeah,
because he did a
Campbell
couple
Trophy
things.
winner. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
he won both the Sullivan Award and the Campbell Trophy. I believe he's the only winner we've had of either. And that's just sensational. I also think he graduated third in his class.
Yeah, he's one of those like Kenny Brinson, like Douglas MacArthur kind of guys.
Yeah. And so I wanted to make sure we mentioned him. And, Kenny Brinson, like you said, Kenny probably came in with as big a reputation of any recruit we've had in the last 20 years. And he pretty much lived up to it by being a 4-year starter. I don't know that he improved that much from his plebe year to his first year, but he was a solid starter for 4 years.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm glad you remembered Rodriguez. I mean, yeah, he was solid, and again, on-field leadership. It's easy when you look at linebacker to look at stats, but leadership is such a big part of it. And he was one of those on-the-field leaders. Just a great guy. And the four that you picked here, you could almost throw those into throw them to a hat and pull them out, and I'm not sure you'd go wrong. But yeah, I mean, Andre Carter, given his, some of the success in the NFL, and again, yeah, that junior year, and agree with the comments that have been made. The downside, he was an unknown quantity going to in his junior year, and defensive coordinators were playing catch up. They knew what he brought and what his techniques were, and they could scheme against it. And and getting banged up made for a tough senior campaign.
Yep, totally agree. All right, moving on to corner. We kind of all agree based on, the tragedy with Brandon Jackson, unfortunately. So we only took guys who graduated, right? Elijah Riley, best cover corner we had. Would also made a great safety and played safety in the league for a little while. Not really any question mark there. Jabari Moore I think he started the most games of any player in Army history, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Because Jabari played 5 years, and so he had 40 something, some crazy amount of starts, which is really great. And then second team, we went with this is where we were starting to get a little thin, right? And one of the challenges as you look at what he can do from a scheme perspective and what Jay Bateman can do and everything else is their ability to send more pressure. You often hear, Steve, I'm sure you hear this from your fans a lot too. Why don't we pressure the quarterback more? Because you don't want to leave these jokers on an island.
Yes.
And Nate Woody's bend but don't break. He hates when I use that term, but his bend but don't break is perfect defense for Army to play, not letting guys get over your head, whatever else. Backup, we went with Cam Jones and Jaden Mays. I don't think either one of them, I'm not picking on them, but neither one of them are super special, but they're both solid, good corners, I think, for Army. And I think, we've been so thin at that position that's kind of who makes the team.
Yeah, I agree. And that's been, I think, one of our biggest recruiting challenges over the years. And I don't know what that is, that we can't pull in those 3-star cornerbacks that have the speed, that have the footwork and that. So yeah, I would agree with Elijah Riley, man, goes without saying. But Jabari, I mean, yeah, he got a whole lot of game time, and especially his senior year, he was so solid. You could almost leave him on an island, depending on the
Jabari
opposing
he was a
wide
great
receiver.
cover corner. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, Steve, I think you hit on something. The hardest positions, I believe, for us to recruit are rush end and cornerback. And so the 4 that we've had on those positions in the first the first team, or 3, like Josh McNary, looking at Andre Carter is a little bit of a rush end.
Yeah.
And then Jabari Moore and Elijah Riley, really separating from those skill sets of being able to cover or be able to beat a man one-on-one is from a rush end position. Those are unique. And we're going 25 years, and we've really found 2 real dominant cover corners in 25 years, and 2 guys who could beat people and beat a double team from a rush end perspective. That's how hard it is to find those at a school like Military Academy.
Yeah, it's funny when I was there back in the Bob Sutton days, and obviously Monken's done a much better job recruiting than Sutton did. But one of the things Coach Sutton used to say is it's really hard to recruit speed here. I think, I draw whatever conclusion. I don't think speed goes along with a 1600 SAT score in a lot of cases. It could, but typically God doesn't give us both of those skill sets. I don't think so. So safety, for us, the first team was a no-brainer. Caleb Campbell, who was a true NFL level talent.
What a tragedy the way that played out. I think it was the night before reporting to minicamp, rookie minicamp, and they yank it. That I hate that for him.
Yeah, that was such a disaster. Just a disaster. It was funny, right? Like, so much funny in a sad way. So much was going wrong with the Army football program that back in those days. It was like every decision we made are just absolute clowns making these like the lack of leadership at the military academy and in the Army And if you guys have friends who were generals at the time leading, I'm sorry, they're clowns. Like, I have nothing else to say. The lack of leadership was so bad. And it was crappy decision after crappy decision after crappy decision. But I don't want to go down that road. But Caleb Campbell was just a stud on some really bad teams. Marquel Broughton, we talked about him, what a great leader he was. Two-time captain, which is highly unusual, three-time starter, and just played the run great, played the pass great, and was really the quarterback in the back of that 2021 defense, which is one of the best defenses we've had in the Monken era at Army. And then second team, Casey Larkin was a pretty, I don't want to say easy choice, but a pretty obvious choice for us. The last 2 years was just really hard to deal with back there. Unfortunately, injuries banged them up late in the year. I'm still, as much as I love Nate Woody and as much as I think he's the best DC in the country, I'm still angry we left Casey on an island against Eli Heidenreich on the freaking 4th and goal from the 8 and didn't get him any help. That just drives me absolutely berserk. That's totally not on Casey. That's on the coaches. I know they said they wanted to bring pressure, but I don't know. He's going to Heidenreich. How do you leave him single covered? I don't understand that, but with a safety. But anyway, and then the tough one was the last safety. Dude, safety's been a really strong position under Monken, especially. Do we go Jalen McClinton or Gibby Gibson? And there was a lot of back and forth, very similar skill sets. Both guys were great. We gave the nod to McClinton barely.
Yeah, that was actually the name that I was pondering. That was a tough call. And again, I'm not sure there's a wrong answer. But Gibson was one of those guys, not only a solid player, but he made the people around him a better players as well.
I'm trying to remember what Gibson did on the last play of a game to win us one. Was it a tackle on the goal line?
Overtime, Eastern Michigan. They're going for 2, or it might not have been overtime, but it was a 2-point conversion. And he tackles the guy on the goal line, flips him, and the guy lands with the ball like on the 1-inch line.
Yeah. It was one of those rare cases where a defensive player made the play of the game at the end.
That 2017 team, I used to call them the Cardiac Cadets. They were like this year's team, really not good for my gray hair. But that team won most of those one-score games, whereas this team was 4 and 5.
Caleb Campbell, I don't think we can say enough what a good player he was on bad teams. He was credited with 307 tackles as a safety. That shows our front seven wasn't stopping much. But I mean, and how big he was and how fast he was. We have not had guys who so exceeded the sort of the physical standards profile of a position like he did. He just was really unusual. And Markel Broughton, his intelligence, his leadership, he was a major difference maker. So those two really separated themselves. And like you said, we've had some other good ones. We've had a lot of solid players back there. It's, you don't have to cover the same speed wise as a corner. So we've got more people that fit as safeties than as corners.
Yep.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, and that's with Marquel and Caleb. I'll tell you what I love about both those guys, and I know them both really well. They're better people than they were football players, if you can believe that. I had Caleb in. He's a speaker and an author now. I had him in to speak to our sales organization last year at my day job, and just knocked it out of the park. If any of you guys know anybody who's looking for a speaker for a meeting, Caleb's on.
Okay.
He's good. So I'm gonna plug him. So we've taken a long time, but the three of us, so Steve, my wife and I ran into Dave and his wife on the way to dinner at Army Navy this year, Friday night. And I think, hopefully I didn't make him miss his reservation at Capitol Grill. We talked for about an hour. So, we could talk Army football all night. Any parting shots, anything you guys want to say? I mean, I think the summary and the cool thing about this is, gosh, Jeff Monken and his staff have brought in some really high quality talent the last 12, 13 years. And Army football is in a completely different stratosphere than we were in 25 years ago.
Yeah,
shots?
Yeah, a spot on, and I'm glad you brought it back to that, because I think to look at, we've sort of looked at the past, an opportunity to sort of snap the chalk line where we are right now, and you guys probably saw it as well. We lose to Navy, and there's an element of the fan base that goes Chicken Little, and Navy's got Monken's number. It's time to move on from Monken. And I'm just going, okay, just take an afternoon, look through where he's brought us to. I continue to contend that there's not a better coach, not only scheme wise, leadership wise, culture wise. I mean, the thing I love about him, he doesn't see him as his role in the role of Army football as sort of this ancillary kind of function at the academy. They are contributing to developing leaders of character. And again, some great Army football players out there leading our soldiers. So we got to be thankful for what we are. Yeah, expect best. And I think the fact that there's such severe disappointment.
He's raised the bar so high.
Exactly.
We want to beat Navy every year now. We were dying to, Dave, you brought up the 2016 game. We would have loved to have just beat them once. Now the expectation is win the CIC, win the conference championship. The Army fan base has gotten delusional as many of the P4 fan bases out there.
Exactly. Be thankful for what we have. I mean, we've got the right coaching staff. Yeah, there's been some churn here. As we get successful, there's going to be that churn. But yeah, the more they whine, to me, that's a great barometer of how far we've come.
Yeah. The golden era of Army football was the 40s, right? But this is the second golden era we're in right now. I went back and looked at the records back to 2000. Todd Berry, John Mumford, Bobby Ross, Stan Brock. That group, we were 20-85 during that time frame. Rich Ellerson looked like Vince Lombardi in comparison. He was 20-41, but he won us a bowl game. And remember how sweet that was.
I was at that bowl game.
So up to Monken in this window, we were 40-126. Jeff is 89-63, and he's won 6 out of 7 bowl games we've been in. And how many CIC games? So yeah, this is the golden era. The other thing I thought about as I watched was how fortunate I feel in this window that we've been able to watch all the home games. Our deal with CBS Sports allows us as fans all over the country to watch every week has just been a phenomenal gift, I think.
Yeah.
And so I went then and I said, we've had a lot of announcers in this time window. Who are our first team announcers? So see if you agree with me. I'm going with Ben Holden, Ross Tucker. Ross Tucker was fabulous when he was our color commentator. And I'll give it to Tina on the sidelines. But it has been a pleasure watching those games every Saturday. It makes it harder to get in the car, jump on a plane, and get all the way back to West Point to see it in person when it's so easy to watch it every Saturday.
Yeah, it's great. Like I totally agree with you, Dave. And we had Tina on the pod a couple of years ago before Army Navy. She was just phenomenal, so gracious, like loves covering Army. North Jersey girl, knew Jimmy Charlo. There's a guy we didn't even mention. It's in the NFL. Jimmy Charlo, neighbors with Tina Servasio. So there's another guy we just left off the list, the linebacker. But yeah, just phenomenal. And Ross, I met him at the Thayer one time when I was up there for one of my reunions, and I see him in the booth, and he loves doing the Army games. Now that Gary Danielson's retired, I'm hopeful CBS will promote Ross Tucker to work with Ness for Army Navy. That would be lovely. But yeah, I mean, I agree with everything both of you guys said. Steve, there's
Hey,
not
one
only
thing
is Monken a great coach. Go ahead.
Yeah, just well, I'm talking about announcers. Vern Lundquist, storied career. I actually watched him growing up on Channel 5 News in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But storied career as an announcer. His final athletic event that he called was an Army-Navy game.
The one we broke the streak.
Yes, yes.
He was literally like so emotional in the booth out there. That was great. Yeah, and like you guys said, golden age of Army football. I mean, it really is. I not only is Monken a great when you look at it's funny. I'm really enjoying watching Signetti too because that dude's just built different.
Mhm.
I'm like, whoa! I thought Monken was the best coach in the country. This guy may have him, but it's funny. They talk about all these other guys, and I'm like, no, let any of these other clowns come coach at Army and see how they do. Like Monken is that good. He's that much better than everybody else. And like you said, Steve, not only is he a great coach, I've never seen a better fit, a guy who understands the mission of the academy and what his role is. I've never seen anybody embrace it and understand it the way Monken does. So, yeah, we're blessed. It's a great time to be an Army fan. I'm looking forward to 2026. We so far keep our fingers crossed for another week. Haven't lost anyone in the portal. Jack Balsam, Briggs Bartosh, God's Power, all those guys are sticking around. Get ready for 26. Kale's going to have another year under his belt, but he's going to have some stiff competition, I think, actually.
I think there will be competition to quarterback.
Yep. So I think 26 is going to be a good. We got to replace a lot of guys on defense. But as you said, Steve, no, what did you call it? Chicken Little. No reason for the fan base to go Chicken Little. If Nate Woody's proven one thing, it's that he can replace and reload and get some new linebackers in there. The kid from Buford, Bryson Banks, is really talented. He's short, but the kid's got amazing speed. Noah Nixon, some of the other guys. GBK fans, Gordon Larson will be coming out with his Looking Forward series where he'll mention some of these guys and who has a chance to start next year. Going to be a great offseason. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I know you're both super busy, so I appreciate you coming on here for an hour and 15 minutes and chatting with me. Army fans, this has been Joe Iacono with GoBlackKnights.com along with Steve Kreipe and Dave Worms. Go Army.